afternoon to all you, our grade 11 young geographers, and a warm word of welcome to our telematics broadcast. Now, I'm sure that you feel as the seniors of the school now that the matrics have left, but please remember that to really be regarded as the seniors of the school, you will have to pass your grade 11. And this is actually what this broadcast is all about, to sharpen up your geography skills, your knowledge, in order for you to stand a very, very good chance to be successful when you write your final geography examination. Now, today we are going to have a look at geomorphology with map work. Now, you see that I've mentioned the two as if they are integrated with each other, and that is how it should be done. That is how you should be thinking when you are busy with geomorphology. Not map work on the one side and geomorphology on the other side. Now, the reason why we have chosen geomorphology is that when we visit the schools, then we see that most of the learners struggle a little bit with geomorphology, and this is an opportunity for you to clear up some of the things that you are uncertain of in your geomorphology. Now, we are also going to have a look at a few of the map work skills that you require for the second paper for the end of the year. Now, obviously, there's no ways that we can cover all the work, but the most important things we will do with you this afternoon. Okay, so let's have a look at our things that we would like to do today. As you see here, the main goal of this afternoon is not only to get you through to grade 11. Please, grade 11s, you must understand that you have started off with your map work at primary school level already, and you had many building blocks on your way in grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, 11, and finally next year you will be in your final year as a learner at whatever school you are. And you must regard all these things that you have learned from your primary school throughout your high school, things like latitude, longitude, landforms, orthophoto, map skills, cross sections, GIS, direction, whatever these things are. Remember, you all require all of these things, not only this year, but you must be ready for your examination next year. And that is what we are also going to do to see if we can make the grade 12 work a little bit more easy for you for next year. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to start off is with map symbols. Now, you know, grade 11s, that so many learners, they come and write their second question paper and they've got no knowledge with regard to your map symbols. Now, you know that this is what your map symbols actually look like. Now, I know there's a lot of you who, of course, are saying, but listen here, the map symbols appear on the map. Why must I study them? Now, here's the thing, grade 11s, that remember that when you answer certain questions in your examination, what is required of you is that you will have to, you will need a combination of 3, 4, sometimes 5 symbols to answer a 2 or 4 mark question. Now, if you don't know that symbol, then it means that you've got to go back to the key, you've got to go back to the map all the time, and you are losing precious time. You're going to lose about 15 to 30 seconds every time. You must go back and just to see what the symbol is all about. So please, grade 11s, make sure that you are in a position that you know every map symbol, because as I've mentioned it before, that these map symbols, you need 3, 4, sometimes 5 just to get to one of the answers in your examination. So please make sure that you know every map symbols. Now, what you must remember with regard to your map symbols is the following. That you must know that we have your point symbols, your line symbols, and the area symbols. And this is very, very important. Now, what we've got here is your point symbols. You must be able to identify them on a map. In fact, a very important question is that they could ask you, identify a point symbol, a line symbol, or an area symbol on the map or in a certain block. And then you must be in a position to identify them and can escape. And back to my to the key again. You must know all of those stuff. Okay, so this is here. I've just put on a few here as an example. The point symbols, the line symbols, and the area symbols. It would be a good idea if you take your key and you make sure that you know what is a point symbol, that you know what's a line symbol, you know what's an area symbol, the names, point symbol, line symbol, area symbol. This is self-explanatory. You will be able to see those things on your map. Now, okay, now grade 11s, I would just like to have a look at the map skills required, not only in grade 11, but going right through to grade 12. You must be in a position to do all these things. So let's have a look at this. Firstly, you must know direction and bearing. Now, it's very, very important that you must know direction and bearing. Please, grade 11s, you're not going to believe me, but in grade 12, we still have problems with candidates not knowing north, east, south, west. Please make sure it's very, very easy. You know, in primary school, you do direction for the first time. And it's very easy, of course, to remember it. If you look at it, it will be, of course, north, east, south, west. Easy to remember. You guys never, ever smoke weed, okay? And you will be able to determine what the direction is. So make sure that you know direction. Okay, the second skill that you must have is how is height represented? Now, I'm coming back to height. Now, with the height represented, it would be contours, trick stations, spot heights, benchmarks. Just hang on a little bit. That we're coming back to that during the course of the afternoon again. Then your map reference. Now, these things you've done in grade 9, you'll see that most of these things come on from your grade 9 already. And actually, you just have to revise it. And map reference is one of them. Of course, coordinates. Also something that if you actually do that at primary school for the first time, see that you know how to work with coordinates. We'll be coming back to coordinates again. And then, of course, your cross-section, your intervisibility, and the direction of river flow. Now, grade 11, there's no ways that we will be able to do all the map skills this afternoon. Make sure if you don't know how to do this, go back to your teacher, right? And remember, when it comes to map skills, practice makes perfect, okay? You've got to practice map skills all the time. It's not something that you can study. Practice makes perfect. So what you've got to do is, if you look at coordinates or whatever one of these map skills, take a topo map and work out something, go to your teacher and ask, listen, am I correct here? Please help me again, okay? So please make sure that you understand your map skills. Okay, then what's very important is that you must also know your contours and slopes, the different contours and the different slopes. Now, very quickly, I'm going to have a look at this. Now, we've got your concave, your convex, your terrace slope. Now, of course, you also have your gradual slope and your steep slope. And please, this you have also done about 2 years ago. Remember, everything is based on contours. How far are they apart? At your gradual slope or your gentle slope, of course, they are further apart. Steep slope, closer to each other. Now, have a look at these ones that we've got here. Sorry. We've got our concave slope here. Here we've got the contours far apart, and then of course they are close to each other. That is why we first got a gradual slope and then a steep slope. See, first far and then close to each other. Convex, exactly the opposite. First close to each other, in other words, it's going to be steep, and then further apart, which will make it a convex slope. And then your terraced slope would be when the contours are in pairs, and that is the type of slope that we will nearly like steps. That is what is called your terraced slopes. Now all these things, these diagrams, you will find in the booklets that were distributed to the school as well. Now, the calculations that you must be in a position to do. Now, again, we won't be able to. I mean, calculations takes very, very long, and it won't be possible to explain or to show you how each one of these should be done. But see that you are in a position to do the following calculations: distance, area, gradient, magnetic declination, magnetic bearing, and vertical exaggeration. Please, grade 11s, this you will have to practice all the time, okay? If you do distance, if you want to practice distance, get 2 points of the topographic map, work out the distance, and go back to your teacher and ask him, did I work properly here? Is this area correct? is my magnetic declination correct? And please, please, again, I'm repeating myself again, practice makes perfect. You've got to do at least around about 5, 6, 7, 8 of these different calculations to really be prepared for your examination. Now, here we've got a map, topo map, and I'm just going to give you, say, about 15 seconds. Any one of you on our WhatsApp number, or can you answer the following question? Which of the diagrams, X, Y, or Z, represents the slope AB? Which one, X, Y, or Z, represents the slope AB? Anybody there that has the answers? Remember, you will find the answer actually in the previous slide that we've shown you of contours and slopes, right? You should know it. It's also in your booklet. So there's your question. Which one of the diagrams X, Y, and Z represents slope AB? Anybody? Yeah, we've got an answer here. Somebody said Y. So let's have a look if that's another one that says Y here. Right, seems to me everybody knows what's going on here. So if you have a look at this, here we've got our contour, our topographic map. And what's very important, you have to see that we've got A and we've got B there. And what's happening now is here we've got our contours, look at that, far apart, and then closer to each other. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 answers here so far, and all of them, wow, all of you, about 10 answers now, all of you correct, and your answer there would be Y. Okay, now, you must also know why. How did we get to this answer? Yeah, remember, here's A first, we've got the contours far apart, so this would be a gradual slope. Look at that, you first got a gradual slope there, you've got that, and then suddenly the contours, they actually get closer to each other, and there we've got our steep slope, of course, there. Okay, right. Thank you very much for this answers, and let's proceed. Okay, now we've got one exactly the same map. We had a look at this, right, and we saw that we have our concave slope that we have here. We're still getting a lot of answers. Why? Thank you very, very much for these answers. Now, okay, now. Here we've got a calculation. Calculate the gradient between spot height 1797 and spot height 2263. The gradient that you must calculate. Now, what's happening here is that this is very, very important. And here I just got a question here, how do we calculate gradient? And this is exactly what I'm going to do now. Now, gradient is the only calculation that I'll be able to do with you. But remember, grade 11, if you can calculate distance, then you can calculate gradient as well. I can't understand that some learners tell me, I've got no problem with distance, but I can't calculate gradient. Remember, what is gradient? You've got to calculate distance, and all you've got to add there is a difference in height. So let's have a look at how gradient must be calculated. Yeah. Okay. Now, what we've got here is the following. Gradient. We've got the vertical interval over the horizontal equivalent. That's all that means is the difference in height above your horizontal, your distance. So that is quite easy to understand that. Now, matrix grade 11s, I'm getting a lot of questions how to calculate the different, do the different calculations. There are 6 of them, and this, we will definitely not be able to do that. I've chosen gradient to do so. So if we don't do your calculation, please go back to your teacher and ask him or her to show you how to do that calculation. Calculations alone is actually a broadcast on its own. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Here we've got our gradient. So the first thing that we've got to do is that we must determine the difference in height. Now, what we've got here is the following. Here we've got a height of 1,797 and a height of 2,263. So what's happening now? So we've got to get the difference in height. That's what VI means, vertical interval, the difference in height. So that would be 2263, that's that one, minus this one, 1797,466 meters. Now, please, grade 11, see how easy is this. All you need to do is the difference, calculate the difference. It's an ordinary, very easy subtraction sum. Now, if you do that, you already have 2 marks in the calculation. Okay? So you've got 2 marks already. So let's see what happens now. The next thing that happens is that we must calculate the distance, or the horizontal equivalent, as it's also called. Now, this is an ordinary distance calculation that you've done in grade 8 already. Now, have a look at this. So the distance on the map between these 2 points A and B is 8,3 centimeters. Now, if you measure that, it would be 8,3 centimeters. So what do I do? 8,3 times 50,000 over 100,000, that gives me 1,9 kilometers. Now, when you've got 1,9 kilometers, you've got to convert it to meters. That's very important, because my difference in height is also in meters. So now when I've got both in meters, it makes my calculation, now for the first time, I can really calculate this. Now, here's our answer. So this is now easy. So all I need to do now is to take the difference in height, which is 466, upon 1,900, and what's happening now, I must simplify. Please remember, it's not a division sum, all right? It's not a division sum. I must simplify. So when I simplify it, and my answer would be 124,07. Now, grade 11, all I wanted to show you here is how you do your calculations step by step, okay? And as I've said, I just used this one as an example of the 6 different calculations. If you've got any problems with the other 5, or you want to refer back to what I've done now, please go to see that you are in a position, go to your teacher and see that you are in a position to do all the other calculations as well. Okay, now, before you can do a calculation, you must know how height is represented on a topographic map if you want to calculate gradient. Now, not only for your gradient calculation, but also for exam question. In my introduction, you should remember that when I spoke about map skills, I mentioned representation of of height. Now, as I've said, a very popular question would be that, a question paper would be, name 2 ways in which height is represented in block A3, for instance, okay? Then you must go look at the ways only in that one block. Please, grade 11, only in that one block, right? Because you won't find all 4 of them. There will be 2 or perhaps 3, right? So please remember, you must look only in that one block. Okay, so let's see how height is represented on a topographic map. As I've said, if you don't know that, you cannot do gradient. You cannot calculate gradient because the first step in gradient is to calculate the difference in height. Okay, so here's the first one. First one, contours, of course. Now, if you look at contours here, contours was the first thing that you really did with regard to height, right? The lines connecting places with the same height. So contours, very, very important. The second one, your trig stations. There we are, right? Your height of your trig station as well as the number. You must know which one is the height and which one is the number here. So we've got here the height of this one. Have a look there, 877.9, and the number that would be 72. Very important that you must know what this do. Now, the next one, spot heights. Now, let's have a look at spot heights here, right? In the blocks here, here's a spot height, right? Here we've got a little dot there with 855, and there we've got one with 681. That means the exact height there would be 681, and the exact height there would be 855 meters. Okay, so now you've seen 3 ways in which height is represented. The last one in which height is represented is by means of the the different benchmarks. Now, your benchmarks, have a look at this. Here we've got a benchmark here, all right? And it's very important that you know, here along the road, 733,2, that's the exact height of the road there. Here we've got 719.7. That is the exact height of the road here. Now here you've got 733. Here you've got 719. So you can immediately see in what direction it gets steeper all the time. Okay. So in what direction the land is rising in this regard. Okay. So grade 11, just have a look at this again. The four different ways in which height is represented. You must know contours, trig stations, spot heights, and benchmarks. And if they ask such a question in the exams, you can only go look in that specific block that they refer to you in the question paper. This is easy work, okay? But if you do gradient and you want to calculate it and you don't know this, there's no ways that you will be able to calculate gradient. So see how important height is on your topographic map. Okay, when we work with grade 11s, grade 10s, we always see that coordinates is usually a problem. Now, if you have a look at coordinates, then what coordinates actually you must know is your degrees, your minutes, and seconds, right? Degrees, minutes, and second. That is very, very important that you must be able to do that. Now, have a look at this map that we've got here. Here we've got 29 degrees, 26 degrees. Now, I'm purposely left out one very, very important word. That is south and east. You must know by now that in South Africa, everything will be east, right? Your longitudes will always be east, and your latitudes will always be towards the south. Now, so what have we got here? This line here would be 29 degrees and 0 minutes. That line there would be 29 degrees and 1 minute, right? 26 degrees, 45 minutes. 26 degrees and 46 minutes. You must be able to see this on the map, and that is very, very important that you must be in a position to do that. Now, okay, let's have a look at this. Remember that 1 degree is equal to 60 minutes. That's very important. Now, this means that this would be, as I've said, 46 minutes that we've got there. Now, what is happening here is that on this side, here we've got 1 minute. Look at this, 29 degrees north minutes, 29 degrees 1 minute. 26 degrees 45, 26 degrees 46. I've shown you that already. Now, okay, let's see what happens now. I've drawn a circle here. And now we want to see what is the latitude and the longitude of that specific, of the coordinates of that specific circle. Now, let's have a look. Now, what's important is this. Remember, we must first have a look at the latitude. So that will be the latitude, right? So the latitude would, in this case, be 26 minutes and 46, 26 degrees, sorry, and 46 minutes, right? South, please remember, you must add south. Now let's see what happens when we move towards the east. Then this happens. We're passing that, and then we are there now. So what will my longitude be? The longitude there would be 29 minutes and 29 degrees and 1 minute toward the east. In other words, if we've got this point that we've shown you now, then the coordinates of that point would be 26 degrees and 46 minutes south and 29 degrees and 1 minute east. It's very important that you must be able to do that. But now, in the exams, it's not going to be that easy that they are only going to ask you your degrees and minutes. They're going to add another one, namely seconds. Now, let's see what happens now. There I've drawn an arrow here, right? The trig beacon here. And we want to see what is the coordinates of that trig beacon that we've got now. What did we say? Remember, we must first look at the latitude. So let's go south. Here we go. So when we have a look at this, and then we see, that is where the trick begins. So in other words, this around here, this is where my latitude will be. But now I've got a problem. I know it's 26 degrees. I know it's 45 minutes, but I know also it's not yet 46. So this means it's in between the two. So what should I do now? Let's have a look at this. You must understand that it works in 60s here. 1 degree equals 60 minutes, right? 1 minute, 60 seconds. Just as a watch, you know that. Okay, so let's have a look at this. When I do this, you agree with me that I'm halfway there, and that would be 30 seconds. Am I right? That's easy, 30 seconds, half of a minute. And when I subdivide this, then it means that this is what it's going to look like, right? So if that line crosses here, it will be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, all right? Seconds. So if we have a look at this and I ask now, what is the latitude of our trick station there? Is there anybody who can just send me a WhatsApp and say, what do you think will the latitude be there in seconds? Only the seconds that I'm looking for. We know now it's 25 degrees. We know it's 45 minutes. Anybody? How many seconds would that be? Anybody? Nobody yet. Okay, let's have a look at this. Can I give you the answer? Nobody going to take a chance here. All right, here we go. So, here we go. Somebody's saying 12 seconds. We've got 11 seconds, 10, 11, 12. Okay, let's see. It cannot be 10. Why cannot it be 10? Because it's not exactly on. If it was 10, then it would cross that line here. Now we're getting 12, 11. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Right. So, when we have a look at this, it would be that. It would be 26 degrees, right? 45 minutes, and that's 10, 11, 12 seconds, okay? Yeah, between these, there will be another line because 20 is about here, so it definitely can't be 11. It's a bit further than that, okay? So that would be my answer. Remember, it must be south. Okay, now, the next one. The longitude. I'm looking for an answer. Anybody who will try and give me the answer of that? How many seconds? We know it's 29 degrees, am I right? We know it's north minutes. How many seconds would it be? Yeah, I've got my first answer, 42. All right. 41. Anybody else? 42, 41, 41, 41. Okay, guys, I see you. Yes, somebody wrote 46. I mean, that's a bit far. Okay, 41, 42. Okay, let's see what's our answer. There we go. All right, 29 degrees, north minutes, 41 seconds, east. Okay, so you see, grade 11s, it's easy if you think. If you think longitude, you think like that, right? Longitude. If you think latitude, it's towards the south, okay? And please, people, when you do that, try to subdivide your minutes into seconds, and then you'll be quite accurately, you'll be able to get to the correct answer there. Thank you for your responses. I'm seeing still coming a few answers coming through here, but thank you very, very much. Okay, now, a very important question is river direction. Now, I can assure you, grade 11s, if there's a river, or should I rather say most maps will have a river on, then you can be asked in what direction is the river flowing, okay? So you must know the reasons for the direction of rivers, in which a rivers flow. Okay, so let's have a look at that. The first reason, rivers always flows from the land towards the sea. I mean, that's basic, you should know that, okay? The second one, rivers flow from high to low, all right? That's also easy. I mean, otherwise a river is flowing upstream. That's impossible. The third one, the contours always point upstream. Now, this is a bit more difficult. Have a look at this. Here are your contours. No heights. See, there's no heights on this one. There you see there's heights. There's 80, there's 40, so the river is flowing in that direction. But look at this one. see the rivers are pointing upstream, in other words, towards the highest point. Look at that pointing. This means the river is flowing that way. Okay. Tributaries always join downstream. Right, so that's very, very important. Remember, if you've got a tributary and the tributaries join in the other direction, then it means the one river is flowing from high to low and the other one from low to high. That's totally impossible. Rivers flows that way and the tributaries join in the direction in which the rivers flow. Remember that one. Okay, and the last one, the dam wall always shows downstream. Now, if you've got a dam wall here and you've got a dam here, right, you see this line there, that is the wall of the dam. And what's happened? Of course, the river will be behind the wall. The dam will be behind the wall, so that is what we've got there. Now, those are the directions that you must know, right? You must know these directions. You must know the reasons for this. Now, what's very, very important now is that you must be able to apply that on a map. Now, here we've got a river, the Steenbras River here, flowing here, okay? There's the Steenbras Dam flowing here, right? Now, very, very easy. Before I actually show you, can anyone just tell me in what direction is the Steenbras River flowing? Quickly on your WhatsApp. In what direction is the Steenbras River flowing? Before I look at any reasons. South, I've got to answer south. Anybody who doesn't agree? From west to east? Southerly? Anybody else? Southwest? South from the land to the sea. Remember, that's not a direction. It must be north, east, south, or west. Here we've got towards the west. Okay, let's have a look. Even if you did not know anything with regard to these reasons in which a river flows, you know that rivers always flow towards the sea. Am I right? You know that. So let's have a look at this. So if we've got the sea here, I even put here north with south, the directions here. So this means the river is flowing in that direction. In other words, in a western direction. Okay? So please, grade 11s, you must know. You must be able to, you see, I think that many of you made the mistake that you don't know your real your directions, okay? So please have a look at this. If this is the sea here, the river can only flow in that direction, right? So in other words, south, west or southwest. Some people wrote southwest. I will accept that as well, okay? That's the only direction in which your river can flow here. Now, reasons. Why is it flowing in that reason? Let's have a look. The first reason that I've mentioned already is that it is flowing towards the sea. Am I right? There's the mouth of the river, right? And it's flowing towards the sea. That's easy. Okay. Second, it flows from high to low. Now, here we've got a contour of about 300 that I've highlighted there. And there we've got a contour of about 100 meters. So this means that this river is flowing from 300 to 100, in other words, from high to low. Here we've got another reason. The dam wall. Look at this, we've got the Steenbras Dam. I wonder who of you saw the Steenbras Dam and the dam wall here. You see this black line here? That is the dam wall. And of course, the dam will be behind the dam wall. Have you got that? So that is where the water is. This means the river can only flow out of the dam there. In other words, in that direction, as I am indicating there. All right, look at the tributaries here. This river is flowing in that direction. Here's a tributary coming there. So they are joining at an acute angle or downstream, right? And then, of course, the last one is the contours that bend upstream. Can you see? Look at these contours here. Can you see the contours are quite straight here? Look at this here, right? No rivers. But see what's happening here. Look at the contours. All of them are bending like that, okay? And this bending upstream, in other words, it's bending towards the 300s. It's bending to the highest point. So this means the river can actually only flow in that direction. So grade 11s, please see that you are in a position to identify the direction in which rivers flow and the reasons as well. Now, please take note, all the reasons won't be on the map, okay? You can only mention the reasons on the map. If there's no sea, if there's no ocean, you cannot say it's flowing from the land to the sea, please, okay? If there's no dam, you can't say that the dam will, you can't. Okay, so you can only name the features that are found on the map. Please, please, please remember that. Okay, right. So, so grade 11s, these are all the map skills that I have a look. We'll still have a look at more map skills as we proceed, but I'm going to and we're going to have a look at our geomorphology. Now have a look at geomorphology. Now, what we're going to do now is, as I've said in my introduction, that when we do geomorphology, we are going to do geomorphology integrated with map work. All right? Very, very important. Now, if you have a look at this slide that we've got here, remember you do three types of landscapes. You do horizontal layers, you do inclined layers, and you do massive igneous rocks. Now, we're going to have a look at each of them very quickly and see how they are formed and all these type of things. Okay, now here we've got horizontal layers, and the most important things that we will have a look at is your butte, the mesa, and the conical hill. Now, if you see, here's a plateau that we find here. This means that this whole area a few million years ago was that height of the plateau. And what happened was, we had rivers flowing there, and it cut up this whole plateau into smaller blocks like that, and these blocks became smaller and smaller and smaller, and you got your mesa, you got your butte, you got your conical hill. Very, very important that you must know this. Now, the largest one of the lot, of course, will be your mesa, followed by your butte, followed by the conical hill, right? What's very important also that you must know that on top of your mesa and your butte, you've still got your hard layers. Look at that brownish color there. But at your conical hill, the brown layer has completely been removed. Okay, so let's have a look at each one of them here. Now, here we've got a mesa. Now, remember what we're doing now. Again, we are looking at this. Here we've got the photo. And on this side, very, very important. Have a look at that. Here we've got our map work. What does it look like on a topographic map? So here we've got a mesa, or it looks like a table-mounted large flat top with a hard layer. That is called a mesa. Now have a look at this. Here we've got the what it looks like on a topographic map. But look at this area here. You see we've got a lot of brown here indicating your steeper slopes, and here a lot of white, which means it's completely flat. Okay, so that is what your mesa looks like. Now, a bit smaller than your mesa would be your butte. Immediately you can see that this one is a bit smaller than the previous one, right? There's a mesa, and there's your butte, a bit smaller. Okay, so here we've got example of Koffiebees and Teebees here in South Africa. Two copies. Now, here we've got a butte, and this one is even smaller. You see, it has been eroded away, and it became smaller and smaller, and Teebees is actually in a stage that one of these days that the hard top is going to be completely removed, and then you're going to have a conical hill. And that is what it looks like on your topo map. Here you've got your butte. You see again the wide, actually smaller bit than the previous one, white opening. Here you've got nearly no opening there, showing you that the top is much smaller than the other one. Okay, so that's your butte and your conical hill. Okay, usually students struggle with inclined layers. Okay, so what's happening now is, remember you had your horizontal layers in the straight line. Okay, so what happened? The layers did that. Okay, so what's happening now is that it could have been that we had a volcanism intrusive here below the Earth's surface, and it pushed up, and what did it do? The horizontal layers tilted like that, and now we've got inclined layers, right? And now it's a different ballgame. Let's just have a look. What do landscapes look like when you've got inclined layers? Now, here on our yeah, I see here that my Malefo here actually says that the conical hill is also called a pointed butte. You are 100% correct, and because it's pointed, right? The top layer, the hard layer, has been removed, and it's also called a pointed butte. Thank you for your input there. 100% correct. Okay, so when we've got our inclined layers, what's very important is that you must know that we've got our hard rock and we've got our soft rock. Now, here's a hard rock, and there's soft rock. And what you must know when it comes to hard rock and soft rock is then when weathering and erosion processes take place here. Of course, when you have a softer rock, it's going to be much faster than your harder rock. Okay, so let's have a look at this. I want you to have here we've got a slope on this side, and this one is very gentle. But look at this slope on this side, and it's very steep here. Now, why is that here? It's because of this. Remember, look at this. On your hard rock, because weathering and erosion, it takes so long for it to happen because it's harder here. And the softer rock is going to, erosion and weathering is going to take much faster. This means that here it's going to have a steep slope. So what's happening actually is the following. On your dip slope, you've got a gentle slope. Why? Because it's a resistant or harder rock. And because it's a hard rock, your weathering and erosion will take place much slower. And that is why you've got a gentle slope there. On the other side, see what's happening here? Here you've got a steep slope, softer layer, right? And this is called your escarp is called on that side. Now this is the Magaliesberg here in South Africa. Now let's have a look at this. Here we've got a topo map of the same area. And I've turned this map around that it matches the photo. Now have a look at this. What we've got here. Look at the contours here on this side. Do you see the contours are further apart there? Have a look at that. And compare it to that side. And then you would see that the contours are closer to each other. And this is very important that you see that. Have a look at this. Can you see contours further apart? Now, if it's further apart, you expect a gentle slope. 100% correct. All right? Here, the contours are closer to each other. And that is why you've got a steep slope or your escarp that you find there. So, grade 11, this is very important that you must be able to understand the stuff. You must understand inclined layers. What must I remember? Hard rock, soft rock. Right? That's the first thing that you must remember. You must remember that it's going to take much longer for weathering to take place at your hard rock. Agree with me there, right? So, what's going to happen? You're going to get, your slope is going to be much more gentle or gradual. The opposite, of course, takes place at your softer rock, where it takes much faster, quicker, and then your slopes will become steeper. You must be able to see it on the topo map. Here we've got it. Very easy. Look at where are the contours far apart, and look where they are close to each other, and you've got no problem with that. Okay, all right. So the last part of your landscapes would be massive igneous rocks. Now, when it comes to your massive igneous rocks, grade 11s, it's very important that you must know. Now, we're not going to have a look at this. You must know how, especially your batholite, your laccolite, your lopolite, your pipe, sill, and dike. Please make sure that you know how all these things occur. And all of these things have one thing in common, namely that we've got magma here below the Earth's surface pushing up and forming your sill, forming your laccolith, which is a mushroom shape, forming your lopolith, which is more saucer shaped, and your batholite, which is the largest one of all. See that you know all these things. Very important that you know that. Now, I'm going to have a look at granite domes, or in other words, your batholite. Now, have a look at this. Here we've got a batholite. Here's your magma that pushed up below your Earth's surface, right? That is see what's happening now. So, sorry, as it pushed up now, what's going to happen now is that this surface, this Earth's surface here, that part, the top part, is going to be eroded. And then your batholite is going to be exposed. Have a look at the same one below the Earth's surface. Thereafter erosion, it's exposed, or you can say it's above the Earth's surface. Now, an example of that is Paarl Rock. It's a granite dome. And very interesting, people, very important that we must know some indigenous knowledge, you know. And Paarl Rock is a granite dome, and because of its rounded shape, you can see it looks like a tortoise. The Khoi called Paarl Mountain, those years they called it, of course, Tortoise Mountain. So that would be our granite domes. Now, speaking of granite domes, let's look at another skill called intervisibility. Now, if you have a look at this, here we've got Paarl Rock, which we saw as a granite dome. And here we've got a school. This is Klein Liebenberg Secondary School. I've taught there for 30 years of my life. Now, if you look at here, and we want to know, can the learners here at Klein Liebenberg Secondary School see, is it visible? Paarl Rock, is it visible from Klein Liebenberg Secondary School here? Now, of course, I know all the learners at Klein Liebenberg Secondary School are saying, yes, it is. But let's have a look. How do I know? Very important. Can I see it? What we should do is we must look at different heights. Paarl Rock, the height is there, 543 meters. The school there, 180 meters. Now, that doesn't mean it's visible, because if there's something higher in between, then it means I can't see it. You agree with me? So let's have a look at the, and then we'll see. It's 180, 200, 300, 400, and that one is 543 meters. So if I should draw a cross section there, then this is what it would look like. We've got our school there, and we've got the Paarl Rock there. In other words, that is what it looks like. So, in other words, Paarl Rock is visible from the school. All right? But now, let's just have a look at another example. Here we are now. We are here at the Nantes Dam. The Nantes Dam is 600 meters high. There's Paarl Rock. And the question is, can you see Paarl Rock from Nantes Dam? Let's have a look. 600, 654, 543 meters. Can you see it? Let's have a look at it. Here we've got a cross section. Here's Nantes Dam, 600. You see the 600 there? Here we see Gordon's Rock, 654. And Paarl Rock, 543. Right? So if you are here at Nantes Dam, there's no ways that you can see Paarl Rock. So let's have a look. Here I've brought a photo with. Here we've got the Nantes Dam. Paarl Rock is right on the other side. But look at here, we've got Gordon's Rock. And Gordon's Rock is 654 meters high. In other words, you will never be in a position to see, yeah. Now, somebody asked me, what is intervisibility actually? Remember, intervisibility has to do with whether you can see something from a certain point, okay? If you stand here and you look in a certain direction and something is in your way, something is in your line of vision, then it means you cannot see it. So intervisibility has to do with whether you can see something or not, okay? So that's all that it has to do with intervisibility. Okay. Another thing that you should know in your grade 9 has to do with slopes. And you must know, this is a photo here of a slope. You must know the different slope elements. So let's have a look at your different slope elements. The first thing that you must know is that right at the top, here we find the crest. Now, let's first have a look at what you should know. The first thing that you must know of a slope element is the name. You should know the name. That's, in other words, this one is the crest, right? The second thing that you must know is what does it look like, the shape. And in this case, it's convex. And the third thing that you must know is what process takes place there. In this instance, it will be soil creep. Okay, soil creep just means that the soil is just crawling actually over the crest here. So that's your crest, only that part. You see there, convex, right? The next one. Here we've got the free face or the steep slope here. Free face. It's very steep. Now, deposition is completely impossible here, because if any rocks or whatever that comes here will never be able to be deposited here. It will run along and be deposited somewhere else. Okay, so that is your free face. Then you've got your talus, is the straight and constant slope here, and here deposition can take place. Things that come over the crest there can be deposited there. And the last one is your pediment, right at the bottom that we've got, and there also deposition takes place. And what you should know is that between your talus slope and your pediment, you get your nick point. People, again, I would just like to mention this. Look at your slope elements there. What must you know? You must know the name of it. You must know the shape or what it looks like, and you must know the process that takes place there. So that's quite easy for your slope elements. I am actually concluding with something called mass movement. Now, I would just like you to have a look at this video clip. Okay. Now, you have heard now what mass movement is all about. It's the movement of debris down a slope. Now, what you should know in grade 11 is the following. You should know that you've got basically 4 types of mass movement. The first one that you have is your soil creep, which is the slowest of the lot, slow movement. Secondly, earth flows. That has to do with water-saturated soil that's moving. And then a landslide, which is a quite fast movement. And rock falls, which is a very, very fast movement. Now, grade 11, if you look at these 4, you will see that with the exception of the name, the only difference between those 4 is the pace in which the material moves. And that is very, very important that you must know that. The pace in which the material moves. From slow, at your slow soil creep, which is very slow, right down earth flows, which is a bit faster, landslides fast, and rock falls, of course, very, very dangerous, especially if you drive through mountains. Chapman's Peak, we'll have a look at that now. We've got huge problems with rocks coming loose, going down the mountain, and if you're here in a car or you're walking there, you can be struck by one of those things. So your rock falls is the most rapid one, the fastest moving one, and the most dangerous one of the lot. Now, at Chapman's Peak, to prevent injuries or even death, they have built certain things to prevent people really from getting struck by rocks. Now, what they've got is they've got 3 things that they do. They've got a catch fence. Look at the catch fence up there, right? You see, it's fences that have been built that if the rocks come down the slope there, the fences will immediately catch those the rocks. And then you've got 2 canopies there. And these canopies are built there. Now, these things are only there where you really get your rocks movers, where it comes very frequently, or where there's a danger to do that, the rock forms will take place. Now, what's happening there, it will come down the mountain, it will bounce on the canopy, and of course down the rest of the slope, protecting people from all those things. Now, grade 9s, this concludes our first lesson that we've got here. Next time when I see you, hopefully we will be in matric, right? And what I would like to say is thank you for paying attention. I know that you love geography, and please remember this here is still international map here. I would like to wish all of you good luck for the exams, and I'm looking forward to meeting you and seeing you next year when we present telematics for you again. Goodbye till next year.